When my spirited German Shepherd Rex unwittingly challenges our overzealous HOA enforcer, I realize defending my dog might lead to an unexpected showdown that could turn the neighborhood upside down. Hey there, Porch Patrol Squad. Let me know if you've ever locked horns with a Karen like in today's story. Smash that like button and spill the tea in the comments. And if you're craving more outrageous HOA battles, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Believe me, you don't want to miss how this unfolds. The aftermath of the hedge clippers incident left the neighborhood teetering on the verge of comic chaos. As neighbors dispersed, some still chuckling and others feigning innocence while casting hesitant glances at Karen's warpath of misadventures, I stood there, heart still racing with adrenaline and triumph. Rex now sashayed around me like a king surveying his domain, tail wagging like he was about to enter the Best in Show competition at Madison Square Garden. Oscar leaned in, grinning wider than a Cheshire cat. You know, he said, this might be the best thing that's happened to our neighborhood since we had that block party where Jessica tried to deep fry a turkey in her garage. Apparently, I wasn't the only one feeling the sweetness of communal victory rising in the air like a glorious sunrise. With every chuckle and smile exchanged between neighbors, I could feel the threads of camaraderie weaving tighter, proving that laughter could indeed drown out the bitterness of Karen's reign of HOA terror. Yet, the sweet taste of victory sometimes sours quickly, especially when a certain stubborn blonde refuses to accept defeat. As the excitement dwindled, I caught sight of Karen across the street, planting herself on her front lawn like a disgruntled general surveying the battlefield with arms crossed and that trademark scowl plastered on her face. Honestly, the scene was ripe for a sitcom. The perfect setup for her inevitable comeback. I half expected her to assemble an entire army of neighborhood Karens, each brandishing their gardening tools and ready to take up arms. I could practically hear the dramatic music swell in the background as she gestured angrily. Why did it feel like this would not be the last we would hear from her? Uh-oh, Oscar muttered. And I knew he heard it too, the faint sound of someone trying to rally the HOA troops. If I'd learned anything from dealing with Karen, it was that she equated tenacity with righteousness. All she needed was a keyboard and a determination, like the Avengers facing Thanos. Without missing a beat, I flicked a stray curl behind my ear and declared, if she wants a fight, she's going to get an epic showdown of modern creativity. Like a flaming comet of inspiration streaking across the universe, a brilliant plan started to form. Community involvement was key, and I would rally the neighborhood together for a game of ultimate one-upmanship against Karen. I snapped my fingers, pulling Oscar's full attention back from the looming potential disaster. How do you feel about hosting a neighborhood block party? I wondered, a glint of mischief in my eyes. His eyebrows shot up, clearly on board with the idea, but I quickly added, let's make it an anti-Karen theme. Each neighbor could represent something that embodied their freedom from Karen's oppressive ways. Be it an exaggerated costume, a dish that belittled her obsession with rules, or even a game of capture the fence. The more I thought about it, the more incredible it sounded. Imagine Linda from down the street donning a chain-link fence costume, complete with a sign saying reinforced freedom, or Larry grilling up hot dogs with the slogan, hot dogs, not hotheads. We spent the next couple of days brainstorming oddball ideas, and what started as a whimsical thought evolved into a fervent plan. The community rallied spectacularly, excitement bubbling as neighbors crafted ridiculous outfits, prank gifts, and bizarre games reminiscent of the joyful, chaotic energy Karen so loathed. We set a date, and as I went from door to door, the enthusiasm was electric. It felt like planning a neighborhood Renaissance fair, but with a twist of graceless chaos inspired solely by one single hilarious antagonist who took her role a bit too seriously. Emails flew back and forth about the games we'd play and the outrageous awards. Most ridiculous costume, best display of neighborly joy, and of course, the most epic view of Karen in discomfort, slated for the crowning ceremonies. As the day of the event approached, I could almost taste the sweet, sweet revenge simmering in the air. And oh, how I could imagine the look on Karen's face when she discovered her carefully cultivated fortress of HOA control. had become the center stage of all that was wild and free in our community. The sun blazed brightly as I set up a makeshift stage, adorned with colorful banners depicting Rex in superhero form, aptly titled "Rex Saves the Neighborhood." As the neighbors gathered for a rehearsed performance about reclaiming our joy, dancing like fools to a playlist of cheerful songs. Would she come? Probably. Would she be mortified? Oh, without a doubt. And on that fateful day, as the music blared, children squealed in delight, and neighbors took turns showcasing their kooky costumes, I started to realize this was not just a celebration against Karen. It was a testament to the spirit of our community. Raw, unedited chaos, brimming with laughter, bringing us together in ways I hadn't experienced before. It was clear as I watched everyone engaging in unabashed revelry that something magical was happening here. We were becoming more than just neighbors. We were family. If today was a spectacle, I couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. Surely, Karen would have something to say about her once neat kingdom transformed into a humbling carnival of chaos. Would she join us in laughter or lock herself in her pastel fortress, plotting an even grander the tension was only beginning to build? The day of the much-anticipated anti-Karen block party dawned brighter than the nearly blindingly pastel-colored cardigan Karen often wore. I stood in front of my porch, basking in the vibrant energy of my neighbors, zipping around with armfuls of multicolored decorations and snacks that could rival the best of county fairs. It felt surreal, but here we were, people who once merely exchanged awkward pleasantries over fences, now collaborating in a glorious uprising against the stranglehold of one stubborn HOA enforcer. Guests were donning costumes, each more ludicrous than the last. Linda, as reinforced freedom, looked like a human fence, complete with vertically aligned cardboard strips, while Larry, grinning ear to ear, had turned his grill into an exaggerated hot dog cart, complete with a skull and crossbones sign that read, "No hotheads allowed." I had gone all out for Rex's big moment too, dressing him up in a tiny superhero cape that fluttered in the breeze. I could practically hear the collective oohs and ahs as he strutted his stuff while wearing a crown made of wildflowers. Whoever thought a Police 9 could look so regal? But amidst the hilarity, I couldn't shake off the anticipation swirling in my stomach. Would Karen actually show up? I had it on good authority that she had been watering her petunias while keeping a suspicious eye on the festivities from her front window. But a summit of this magnitude was bound to lure out an HOA general. Surely she wouldn't miss the chance to inspect the Insidious's activities gathering mere streets away. As the party kicked off with the ever-important competition of Capture the Fence, it felt like the neighborhood was something straight out of a feel-good film. Kids raced behind a gnarled tree, wielding plastic swords as they desperately tried to seize the foam fence Larry had created from scraps. Laughter echoed through the air like candy-coated music, and I couldn't help but chuckle as a miniature Lindsay, draped in a colorful box next to Linda, declared herself the Queen of Freedom. Just as I was finally letting loose, I noticed Karen's lilac sedan gliding uneasily down the street, like a ship navigating through tumultuous waters. My heart almost skipped a beat. Merely a spectator at the chaos I orchestrated, or a counterattack waiting to happen? Regardless, the show must go on. Just then it happened. The parade of costumed chaos was officially underway. I took charge, calling for attention with my trusty megaphone. Who knew that position was part of being the self-appointed host, right? "Welcome to the anti-Karen block party," I belted, excitement bubbling in my chest. The crowd erupted into cheers, the sheer fractiousness of it invigorating. Today, we're celebrating our right to freedom of expression. So grab your forks, steal a hot dog, and let's unite against Karen's dreary oppression. Let's dance, let's laugh, let's party. Only, in the midst of our collective jubilation, I noticed something sinister brewing across the street. Karen had disembarked her car, clad in a riotous combination of pastel and floral that seemed determined to battle the boldness of our anarchic glee. She stood there, her arms akimbo, her face adopting the look of a disapproving school principal addressing a rowdy classroom. A sudden quiet fell over the party like the calm before the storm, as all eyes turned to see how she would respond to our defiance. I felt my heart race as I instinctively patted Rex's cape. "Stay close, buddy," I whispered. "If she decides to bring the thunder, we're ready." And then, as if the universe had choreographed the moment, Karen cleared her throat, the sound piercing through the light-hearted hum of the party. "Using HOA funds for this ludicrous spectacle is a violation of several neighborhood codes," she piped, her voice vibrato tinged with indignation as she spread her arms out to encompass the joyous scene before her. The tension felt like a taut wire, ready to snap as the crowd held its collective breath. I glanced at Oscar, his expression mirroring my disbelief. How could someone use a party steeped in laughter and unity to stonewall our goodwill? But then I realized something. This was not just a neighborhood party. It was an epic showdown, and we were not about to back down. Rex, perhaps reading the vibes of rebellion flowing through the air, let out a low bark, sending a ripple of laughter through the crowd. Fueled by his canine charisma, I felt a warm wave of courage wash over me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I bellowed, not wanting to let Karen's sour demeanor drag us down. "May I present Rex, the neighborhood possum defender." As if on cue, Rex miraculously performed his signature trick, rolling over and pretending to arrest an inflatable flamingo that had been unwittingly invited to our shindig. The delight bubbling from neighborhood witnesses was undeniable, and I realized the power of humor in the face of entitlement. If Karen believed she could reign on this parade, she didn't realize the true definition of community spirit was flourishing right here, right now. Standing resolutely, I extended my arms, inviting everyone to join me and dance. The music picked up, windows rattled, and people began to sway, their chuckles intertwined with a boisterous chorus of joy. And amidst the lively commotion, I noticed Karen begin to squirm, her brow furrowed, her eyes darting incredulously between Rex's performance and our unabashed fun. The magic of camaraderie was taking hold, erasing negativity like chalk on a blackboard under spring rain. With that, a sense of shared rebellion filled the air, and it reached a crescendo. Karen, sensing that her brightest scowls couldn't dim our light, suddenly turned on her heels, storming back to her petunia patch, muttering something about miscreants and improper uses of outdoor space. It was the sweetest victory, the cherry on top of a deliciously whimsical cake. Rex and I exchanged triumphant glances that spoke volumes. We had achieved something extraordinary today. As the laughter and music grew louder, it became abundantly clear. We were no longer defined by the tyrant next door, but by our willingness to embrace individuality. And in that shared resolve and joy, we discovered not only freedom, but the essence of community itself. It was a radiant Saturday morning, and I perched on my porch, legs crossed and coffee cup in hand, basking in the beauty of my backyard oasis. Rex, my spirited German shepherd with a penchant for destruction and mischief, was currently engaged in a game of catch that squirrel, proudly signaling his intentions with exuberant barks and frantic pounces. Little did I know that while I was appreciating the warm sunlight filtering through the trees, my canine companion was about to become the unwilling participant in a suburban melodrama starring none other than our self-styled HOA enforcer, Karen Fletcher. That woman had as much charm as a tax form, and I had a sinking feeling she was about to manifest her disdain for anything that dared to disturb her carefully manicured world. I barely had time to take a sip of my coffee before I saw her. Karen ambled around the corner like a pastel cloud drifting towards my solitary storm, her sharp blue eyes narrowing at Rex as he dashed around. I would have loved to roll my eyes at her, but my caffeinated state was still more concerned with the liquid in my mug than the tempest brewing in Karen's mind. She stepped closer, hands planted defiantly on her floral-clad hips, delivering an expression that screamed, "Your dog violated 10 HOA regulations before breakfast." I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head, and I silently braced myself for whatever absurdity would spill forth. "Do you know, Megan," she began, voice dripping with condescension, "that the bylaws strictly prohibit large breeds from being loose in the community? I could have him reported immediately." Each word was laced with that familiar bitterness, and I couldn't help but smirk. A boring Saturday had taken an unexpectedly thrilling turn. "Oh, I didn't realize," I shot back, "that your judge eye eyes, which are stuck firmly in inspect mode, were now classified as legal authorities." The look on her face was priceless, as though I'd just suggested she become a guest chef on a cooking show hosted by raccoons. Just as I was about to continue my caffeine-fueled roast fest, a figure appeared in my peripheral vision. Oscar Ramirez, my ever-so-helpful neighbor and fellow dog person, waltzing over in a graphic tee that boldly declared, "No bad days." He took one look at the scuffle brewing between me and Karen, and instantly, an amused smirk spread across his face. "What did you do this time?" "Tried to tame the wild Karen beast," he quipped, leaning against my porch railing. I raised an eyebrow, motioning towards our mutual nemesis as I shared the latest HOA nonsense. "Oh, just a casual morning scenario where Karen assumes the role of dog police. The irony here? Rex is technically trained as a police 9. As my words hit Oscar's ears, his smirk turned into a full-on grin. "Well, we can't have that," he teased, and I could feel the giddy rush of plotting something absurd. Karen was growing increasingly red-faced, her sharp eyes darting between Rex and me, as though she was trying to comprehend the concept of irony. Meanwhile, Rex, blissfully oblivious, treated his audience of 2 with playful barks. I leaned back in my chair, a devious plan crafting in my mind like a perfect latte art swirl. If Karen thought she could cut through my fence to seize my dog, she was about to be met with an unforgettable lesson in karma. "What would happen," I began, adopting a faux serious tone, "if, say, I had an actual police officer show up the next time you decide to rage against my 4-legged friend?" With a devilish grin, Oscar was quick to play along. "Yeah, we could have a real meet and greet. Meet Rex, your local 9. Warning, he will steal your heart but not your coffee." In my mind, I envisioned a scenario where Karen, the ultimate drama queen, would have to confront a couple of police officers while standing on the very ground she tried to lay siege to. How glorious it would be to watch her flounder in the very fallout of her own entitlement. Just as I was lost in thought, conjuring vivid images of Karen being told off by the very authorities she assumed would back her unpleasantness, I heard a commotion behind me. I turned to see Rex bounding toward the fence line, his tail a joyous flag of triumph. Apparently, he had successfully managed to dig out a small amount of dirt, forcing a section of the fence upward just enough to create an entry point. As Karen's certainty faltered and her eyes widened, I knew my moment had come. With a wink at Oscar, I whispered, "Operation Karen Buster is a go." The pieces of our little plan came into place, and I braced for the hilarity that was about to ensue. Would she finally get a taste of her own medicine? With Karen adjusting her cardigan more times than I could count, and her thin lips pressed into a tight line as Rex frolicked loose like he owned the lawn, the tension could have been sliced with a butter knife. I caught Oscar shooting me a conspiratorial glance. It was almost like he knew I was about to crank this ridiculousness up a notch. If there was a cosmic script for the day, I was determined to make it a melodramatic farce worthy of an Oscar, and not the neighbor's buddy Oscar, but the real one who gets plastic statues and applause. I decided I would engage Karen with the elegance of a fencing master, but instead of swords, I wielded words. "So just to clarify, Karen," I began, my voice dripping with faux sweetness while trying to hold back my laughter, "are you really saying that my dog, who is trained in law enforcement and could subdue an actual criminal, doesn't meet your acceptable aesthetic criteria?" Her eyes bulged for a moment, processing the absurdity. "You dare mock the HOA? This isn't about the law, it's about community standards." Karen sputtered, her voice high-pitched as though she had just bitten into an exceptionally sour lemon. "I can have you reported!" Oh, how my heart fluttered with glee at the thought of her catastrophe of a complaint. Rex barked once, interrupting our lovely tête-à-tête, as if he understood that this was a show worthy of his antics. I motioned toward my 9 companion, now prancing back over, tail wagging and mud flying everywhere. How exactly, my dear Earth Mother of Misery, do you plan to report a dog trained to apprehend criminals? Get a board member and have them deliver a notice of aesthetically offensive dog citation? Ha! Just then, a gloriously chaotic idea hit my brain like a stroke of genius. In that case, I declared, puffing out my chest, I think I'll start a community initiative. Every Saturday morning, we'll host Rex and Friends, a 9 training and doggy playtime event in my backyard. Rex shall stand as the star attraction, and you, my dear Karen, can provide feedback on your aesthetic standards, all while wearing a big fake bow from the dollar store. Oscar chuckled, and I could see the gears turning in his head as he naturally gravitated toward the chaos like a moth to the flame. We locked eyes, sharing the guilty thrill of potentially harassing our HOA warden with canine shenanigans. Karen's face turned a delightful shade of crimson, the color of ripe tomatoes, before she shot back. This isn't over, Megan. You think you're pulling a fast one? I will be taking this to the association, and the HOA board will take swift action. She was practically vibrating with outrage, which was amusing in stark contrast to her pasty pastel demeanor. I couldn't help but grin at the thought of her banging her head against the wall of bureaucracy just to get at me. Already, I could picture bewildered committee members who, upon hearing the word dog, burst into laughter instead of indignation. As if on cue, Rex took that moment to find a half-eaten tennis ball, the only specimen surviving his forceful campaign against inanimate objects. With a triumphant bark, he presented the treasure to me, his mud-stained paws standing proudly on the neat green grass, drenched in chaos. I bent down to give him some appreciation, whispering, "You know you're my secret weapon, right?" Oscar suppressed his laughter behind a cough, while Karen stood there, mouth agape as if she couldn't fathom what kind of dog I thought I owned. "Can't you see how unruly that creature is? He's fearless," she huffed, mortified. Maybe next time she ought to train her judging glare along with her oversized opinions. In the meantime, I decided to push all the right buttons for good measure. Fearless? How about the time he chased an intruder up a tree? Or when he practically scared the car thief off with his rugged good looks? The HOA might just need to face some realities about real-life heroes. It might help bring our value ratings up. I mockingly flashed her a thumbs up, trying to keep my face straight despite my bubbling laughter. The shrill sound of her indignation was music to my ears. Oscar's chuckles crescendoed to a point where I couldn't contain my own laughter either, and I could almost see the steam coming from Karen's ears as she contemplated her next move. Just as I expected, the confrontation led to Karen storming away in a huff, muttering about board meetings and bylaws as she retreated. I turned to Oscar, and it took hardly a second for the both of us to burst into fits of laughter. Our eyes sparkled with the mischief of plotting her eventual downfall. How could one woman test the limits of absurdity so delightfully? I felt like a kid at the fair, 2 cotton candy sticks in hand, celebrating a fantastic win. Now, the real question remains, I said with a cheeky grin. How are we going to get Rex his grand stage to perform his 9-hero act in front of the entire neighborhood? The afternoon sun hung low, casting a golden hue over the comical chaos as we plotted our next move to not just keep Rex out of Karen's clutches, but to teach her a lesson worthy of a dog-loving audience. The stage was set, and the entertainment had just begun. As the sun dipped behind the rows of perfectly manicured hedges, Oscar and I huddled over steaming mugs of coffee at our backyard table, eager to hatch a plan that would both showcase Rex's talents and send Karen into a spiral of bureaucratic despair. "Let's make this a doggy extravaganza," Oscar suggested, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "Like a county fair, but for dogs. We can invite everyone, cat owners too, just to infuriate Karen." I nearly dropped my mug, picturing Karen witnessing dogs parading alongside cats, all while she fumed about the invasion of her precious suburban peace. The visual was irresistible and suggested just how ludicrous our suburban life had become. There was a sinister beauty in using her own tactics against her. I instantly began feverishly sketching out ideas. Rex can put on a show. He can demonstrate some tricks. Oh, and we can have agility courses, a best bark contest, and even doggy massages," I exclaimed, fueled by caffeine and my passion for canine antics. "And we can market it as a community bonding event, clearly delineating how Rex is the poster child for our neighborhood's commitment to safety and companionship." Oscar's laughter rang through the air like chimes in a summer breeze, and I could feel our plan gaining momentum like a runaway train. This was shaping up to be more than just a dog event. It was an all-out celebration of our suburban camaraderie, with Karen firmly positioned as the hilariously hysterical antagonist. With flyers hastily jotted down and the dubious Rex and Friends event name emblazoned across the top, we set off to distribute them to neighbors, gleefully anticipating the chaos that would surely ensue. As we knocked on doors, I watched various expressions morph from bemusement to excitement as I pitched our plucky initiative. A chance for our dogs to shine. Not just a day for the hoity-toity. We're going to build community spirit right alongside Rex's agility course. My enthusiasm was contagious, and even the likes of old Miss Thompson, a surly retired banker, nodded in approval. There was something about dog antics that softened even the hardest of hearts, and I promised treats and a cold drink for all. Plus, it was the perfect revenge on Karen. She'd be a witness to this festival of joy she tried so ardently to stamp out. Before long, I stood at the buttoned-up HOA meeting, feeling like I was standing on stage at an awards ceremony, complete with my trusty sidekick at my side. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," I called out, my voice steady despite the thrum of nerves. "I am here to present a compelling case for community engagement and to announce a series of events dedicated to the well-behaved and very likely heroic 9-star Rex." Even as a few eyebrows raised at my blatant attempt to commandeer the agenda, I fed off their whispers and indignant cross-arms like adrenaline. This was no longer merely a defense of Rex. No, it had morphed into a spirited manifesto demanding the right to celebrate dog ownership. Karen, of course, couldn't resist butting in, her voice slicing through my announcement like a rusty blade. "You can't just host informal gatherings. It will attract chaos, disorder." She breathed heavy, her indignant waddle resembling a furious penguin. The crowd momentarily swayed as she locked eyes with me, daring me to recoil from her claims. But I stood tall, drawing strength from every bark and tail wag from Rex. "Ah, but Karen, isn't this precisely what community is about?" I gestured extravagantly. "The mingling of different individuals, all in the name of fun." There was a thrill in watching her fluster. I could almost hear the gears screeching in her stubborn little head as everyone around wondered if perhaps mixing dogs and neighbors wouldn't lead to a jolly good time after all. As it happened, a wave of laughter engulfed the room when old Mrs. Finnegan stood up, clutching her oversized cat's perfectly stuffed toy. "If we can tolerate the cat's fiasco of a competition last year, surely we could allow a few dogs," she exclaimed, throwing a glance of camaraderie my way. The board began whispering, their tightly wound airs loosening, yet I could see Karen simmering as she clutched her clipboard like it was a life raft in a sea of chaos. With her authority crumbling at the edges, I dared to push even further. "Well, given the nature of community spirit we're cultivating, shall we entertain a vote before Rex's prowess astounds us all? Perhaps we can gauge actual interest." No sooner had I offered my proposal than the clap of eager hands began breaking through, like unconventional applause for the main event about to unfold. With just enough momentum, I witnessed as Karen's fury crescendoed to a point of absolute disbelief, her face a study of incomprehension that made me want to cackle. She attempted to raise a clamor, but her authority was stifled under the weight of wave after wave of sudden enthusiasm for this Dog Lovers Unite event. It was a comedic opera, complete with a villainess fumbling against the chorus of buzzing supporters, and my heart leapt at the very thought of what was yet to come. Rex was about to become not just the pride of our neighborhood, but the rightful counterpoint to all of Karen's pretentious oppression. Perhaps this would serve as both a celebration of dog-loving camaraderie and a victory in reclaiming our space from her clingy grasp. How deliciously poetic would that be? The moment Karen stormed the meeting with hedge clippers in her hand, it felt like the world had hit a record scratch. The tension in the room snapped, and I could hear Oscar trying to stifle laughter behind me. Is that what they used to trim the competition? He whispered, barely containing himself. But it was hard not to envision a scene where Karen, wielding those hedge clippers, became the suburban nemesis we never asked for. I stood there, first in shock, and then bursting into a fit of chuckles, as the audience shifted from shock to confused amusement. It was a mixture of horror and delight, like watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. You know you shouldn't laugh, but oh, how it tickles the funny bone. "Out of my way!" Karen bellowed, striding toward my fence as if she owned the whole neighborhood, and not just the pastel cardigan draped awkwardly over her arms. Rex, beastly and magnificent in his former police dog glory, tilted his head in endearment as she approached. I mean, how surreal was that? A woman ready to ruin everything in her path, confronting my trained, battle-hardened canine? It felt like watching a tiny Chihuahua challenge a Great Dane, absurd and entirely entertaining. Everyone's eyes darted between me and my furious neighbor, and you could almost hear the collective heartbeat of the crowd quicken. In that moment, the stakes became deliciously unclear. "Do you really think this is okay?" I finally called out, my voice tinged with feigned disbelief, stepping forward with all the confidence of someone who knows that her dog of steel stands behind her. "What do you think you're going to do with those, Karen? Open a hedge trimming business?" The laughter erupted around the room, blending wide-eyed incredulity with fervent approval of my mockery. The pinched grin on Karen's face faltered momentarily, and I had just enough time to mentally high-five myself for finding humor amidst what should have been a full-blown disaster. It was the kind of moment where dramatic irony reached new heights. How could she not see how ludicrous she looked wielding garden tools for her mission of crime? In a twist that felt right out of a sitcom, Karen, oblivious to the wave of amusement rippling through the crowd, began snipping at the bottom of my fence like some sort of suburban lumberjack. "This will prove once and for all how dangerous your dog is," she hollered, crudely maintaining that threading needle of insanity. But there was Rex, enthused by the commotion and completely unconcerned, with his impending celebrity as the dangerous weapon. As she wrestled with the fence while the hedge clippers made alarming little thwips, I noticed that Rex had decided then was a great time to showcase his canine command skills. "Rex, roll over!" I called. The dog obeyed, bursting into a sloppy twist, eliciting snickers. The crowd was now fully in on my booming cheer, and I took a moment to bask in the hilarity of it all. That was the moment of the turning tide. Like sailors spotting land after a long journey, the audience shifted from wary observers to the heartwarming support of my cause. "I think you're mistaken, Karen," Oscar chimed in, coming into the fray with a quick and dapper waddle that mirrored my own. "Rex is more likely to help build a community than destroy it." People began to echo his sentiment with slow claps. It was as if Karen's feet were planted in quicksand, and every word she grasped at only pulled her deeper into embarrassment. For every snip of her clippers, Rex performed another trick that solidified his status as a hero rather than a villain. "Jump, Rex!" I shouted, and my dog bounded high, defying the laws of canine physics, while the chuckles turned to full-blown applause. Then it happened. Just as the hysteria reached its climax, Rex took off, bolting past Karen like a streak of light, zooming around her as though he had been unleashed from the bonds of social restrictions. I barely caught a glimpse of what happened next. Someone in a floral blouse claiming their stake that Karen was out of control, prompting a ripple of claims to quell her chaos. It was anchoring to imagine the filaments of my own life, filtering through the absurdities of our HOA predicament, loosening any chains of repression she thought she held. I could practically feel the heat of triumph growing in the pit of my stomach. Amid all the pandemonium, she had officially lost not just the confrontation, but her grip on our once quiet neighborhood, as Rex upgraded into a veritable canine legend. The ensuing chaos led to a medley of discussions filled with humor rather than hostility, and I stepped back, exchanging astounded looks with Oscar. Maybe it was the flavor of community improvement, or perhaps she had painted herself into a corner. Either way, Karen was becoming the punchline she hadn't anticipated. Finally, moments later, with Karen's tantrum trailing off into faint murmurs of, "This isn't over," The clippers were finally wrested away from her. I stood amongst a flock of delighted neighbors, and we shared conspiratorial smiles that hinted at the satisfaction of witnessing one woman's farce unravel gloriously. What was once an HOA meeting taking place in a stuffy room had transformed into the first chapter of an absurd suburban saga that I now knew without a doubt would continue to unfold rather spectacularly. So what comical mischief would be next in our humdrum HOA life? Thanks for tuning in. It really means a lot to us. If you're still fired up from this HOA showdown, check out our next jaw-dropping battle on the right, or let YouTube surprise you with another wild ride on the left. Take your pick, and I'll see you in the next neighborhood drama.